I want you.
3 words, and Elle Morris's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips, because the man saying them was the same one she had promised herself 3 years ago that she would hate until the day she died. The same man 2 dark-suited strangers had once dragged out of her life. He wasn't supposed to know her name anymore. He wasn't supposed to be standing in this dim, private room above a Seoul restaurant, looking at her like no time had passed at all. She had not asked for any of it. Not the black car that pulled up outside the diner where she worked double shifts for tips that barely covered rent. Not the 2 men in dark suits who stood by the door like furniture nobody dared to move. And she certainly had not asked for Lee Tae-min to walk back into her life wearing that same unreadable expression he'd worn the night everything fell apart. But here she was, and here he was, and the words were already hanging in the air between them like smoke that refused to clear.
You don't get to say that to me. Not you. Not after everything.
I know. I know exactly what I don't get to say. I'm saying it anyway.
The real question tearing through her chest wasn't why he came back. It was what he already knew about the rainy night in Atlanta. The car accident that was never actually an accident at all.
Welcome to Afro-Korean Fiction Tales by BeeKay Besties. If you're new and enjoy stories like this, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an update. Now, let's dive into today's video.
Elle Morris grew up in a house that smelled like her grandmother's cooking and never quite had enough heat in the winter. Her father left before she could remember his face, and her mother worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. So Elle learned early how to disappear into the background of her own life, how to want less so she'd be disappointed less. She was smart, sharper than most people around her ever gave her credit for, and she'd clawed her way into a scholarship at a business school in Atlanta where, for exactly 1 semester, she let herself believe her life might actually change. That was the semester she met Daniel. Daniel Osei was charming in the specific way that con men and rich boys often are, which is to say he never had to try very hard, because people simply handed him what he wanted. He told Elle he loved her within 3 weeks. He told her about his family's shipping business, his father's connections across 3 continents, the empire he was going to inherit. Elle, starved for someone to finally choose her, believed every word. She didn't know, not for a long time, that Daniel's family business was a laundering operation for something far larger and far darker. Something that stretched from Atlanta's ports all the way to Seoul's underground financial district. She didn't know that the business partners who sometimes visited Daniel's apartment, quiet men who spoke in clipped Korean and never smiled, were the reason Daniel could afford the apartment at all. She found out the night a black SUV ran her off a 2-lane highway outside the city. The night her car flipped twice before it came to rest in a ditch. The night she woke up in a hospital bed with 3 broken ribs and a detective standing over her asking questions she didn't have answers to. Questions like,
Do you know why anyone would want to hurt you, Miss Morris?
No.
Did Daniel Osei ever mention the name Jang Group to you?
She hadn't known the name then. She would come to know it very well. What she pieced together in the weeks that followed, mostly from a frightened private investigator her mother hired with money they didn't have, was that Daniel had used Elle's university financial aid account, without her knowledge, to funnel money for his family's operation. When the audit trail started closing in, when investigators started asking the right questions, Daniel's family needed a name to hand over that wasn't their own. Elle's name, conveniently attached to those transactions, fit perfectly. The accident wasn't random. It was a warning, aimed at Daniel, using Elle as the message. Get your girlfriend under control, or we'll control her for you. Daniel disappeared 4 days later. Elle never saw him again. What she did see, for the 18 months that followed, was her name dragged through a federal investigation, her scholarship revoked pending review, her mother's modest savings drained on lawyers who mostly just told her to wait. She was 23 years old, and her entire future had been set on fire by a man who never once looked back to see if she survived the blaze. It was during that investigation, in a conference room with too much fluorescent light and not enough air, that Elle first heard the name Lee Tae-min. He wasn't there in person. He was a name on a document, the son of the man whose organization Daniel's family answered to, the heir to an empire the FBI had been trying and failing to touch for a decade. The investigators told her, carefully, delicately, that the Lee family was the reason the case against her had eventually been dropped. Someone with real power had made a call. Someone had decided Elle Morris wasn't worth the ongoing scrutiny an aggressive prosecution would bring to their own operation. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt something closer to rage. Because being erased as collateral damage was somehow worse than being targeted directly. At least a target matters enough to be aimed at. She rebuilt her life the only way she knew how, slowly, stubbornly, refusing every shortcut that might have made it easier. She finished her degree online while working nights. She moved twice, changed her number 3 times, and told herself the name Lee Tae-min belonged to a life she'd escaped, a ghost story she'd survived. Then, 4 months ago, a woman named Grace Adeyemi walked into the diner where Elle now managed the evening shift and offered her a job she had no business taking. Translator and cultural liaison for a hospitality investment group expanding into the American South. The pay was absurd. The signing bonus alone would clear what remained of her mother's medical debt. Elle asked, carefully,
Who exactly am I working for? Jang Hospitality Group? It's a subsidiary under Lee Corp International.
Elle should have said no. She has replayed that moment 100 times since, standing in the diner's fluorescent-lit back office, and every single time, she still doesn't know why she said yes instead. Maybe it was the money. Maybe it was something colder and sharper than money, something that had been sitting in her chest for 3 years, waiting for a door to open so it could finally walk through and demand an answer. Whatever it was, 4 months later it had led her here, to a private dining room above a restaurant in Gangnam, standing across from the man whose family had once decided her life wasn't worth protecting, and whose family had somehow, impossibly, also been the reason it was spared. Lee Tae-min was not what she expected. She'd built an image of him in her mind over 3 years, cold, calculating, a man carved out of the same charm-shaped cruelty that Daniel had worn so easily. But the man in front of her now stood with his hands loosely at his sides, watching her with an intensity that felt less like a predator sizing up prey, and more like a man who had waited a long time for a conversation he wasn't sure he deserved to have.
You knew. This whole time. You knew who I was when Grace hired me.
I hired Grace to find you. 3 years ago.
Say that again?
Elle said, though she'd heard him perfectly. I've had someone tracking your case since the week of the accident, Tae-min said, each word deliberate, like he was setting down something heavy he'd been carrying too long. I know about the lawyers your mother couldn't afford. I know you moved twice. I know you finished your degree at 2 in the morning after 12-hour shifts. I know all of it, Elle, because I made it my business to know. Why? Elle said, and the word came out cracked down the middle, half fury, half something she refused to name. Because I'm the reason it happened to you, Tae-min said. The silence that followed felt like it had teeth. My father's organization, he continued, used Daniel Osei's family as a pipeline for years before any of this happened. When the audits started closing in on them, my father's people were the ones who decided Daniel needed a lesson delivered through someone he'd actually care about losing. I didn't give that order, but I didn't stop it either, because 3 years ago, I still believed my father's business was mine to inherit without question, and I told myself that whatever happened to outsiders wasn't my responsibility to carry. Outsiders, Elle repeated, the word landing like a slap. I know how it sounds, Tae-min said. I've had 3 years to hate myself for how it sounds. Then why call off the investigation? Elle demanded. If you didn't care, why bother making sure I wasn't prosecuted? For the first time since she'd walked into that room, something in Tae-min's composure slipped, just slightly, just enough for Elle to see the outline of exhaustion underneath it. Because I read your file, he said quietly. I read about a woman who worked 3 jobs to help her mother, who tutored kids in her building for free on weekends, who never once, in thousands of pages of surveillance and financial records, did anything except try to survive a situation she never chose to be part of. And I looked at what my family's business had done to you, And for the first time in my life, I couldn't make myself look away and call it the cost of doing business. Elle wanted to hate him for how steady his voice was, for how carefully he'd clearly rehearsed this moment in his head, maybe for years. But underneath the anger, something else was moving, something dangerous and unwelcome, because she recognized the particular exhaustion in his eyes. She'd worn that same exhaustion on her own face for 3 years straight. "So you tracked me," she said slowly. "For 3 years. And then you had Grace hire me under false pretenses to bring me halfway across the world." "Yes," Taemin said, without flinching. "Why not just tell me the truth from the beginning?" "Because I didn't think you'd come," he said. "And because I needed you here, close enough, before I lost the nerve to finally say any of this to your face." Elle crossed her arms, holding herself together by sheer force of will. "None of this explains what you said when I walked in tonight." Taemin was quiet for a long moment, long enough that Elle heard the faint hum of the city outside the windows, the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen below, the sound of her own heartbeat, unreasonably loud in her ears. "I said it," he finally answered, "because it's true, and because I'm done being the kind of man who hides behind convenient silence while people around him pay the price for it. I want you, Elle, not as an apology, not as some debt I'm trying to settle. I want you because in 4 months of watching you work, of hearing you argue contract terms with men twice your age and win, of seeing you rebuild a life out of the wreckage my family helped create, I have never once stopped thinking about you as anything except the most remarkable person I have ever met." "That's insane," Elle whispered. "You're insane. I spent 3 years hating a name I didn't even have a face to put to. And now you're standing here telling me you've been in love with the idea of me since before I ever knew you existed." "I never said love," Taemin said carefully. "Not yet. I said I want you. There's a difference, and I think you know it, because you're the only person who's ever made me care about the difference at all." Elle opened her mouth to answer, to throw something sharp and final at him. Something that would end this conversation, and let her walk out of that room with whatever was left of her composure intact. But before a single word could leave her mouth, the door behind Taemin opened without a knock, and a man Elle had never seen before stepped inside, his face pale, his eyes flicking nervously between the two of them.
Sir, you need to see this. It's about Daniel Osei. He's back in the country, and he's been asking about her.
The name hit Elle like a second collision. The kind that doesn't break bones but breaks something quieter, something underneath the ribs that had only just started to heal. "Say that again," she said, though every word had landed perfectly clear. "Daniel Osei," the man in the doorway repeated, glancing at Taemin like he needed permission to keep talking. "He landed in Incheon 6 hours ago, under a different name, but our people flagged the biometric match at customs. He's already made 2 calls to contacts inside the Gangnam Financial District, and an hour ago, one of our informants said he was asking specifically whether a woman named Elle Morris had entered the country." Elle's legs felt unsteady beneath her, though her voice, when it came, did not shake at all. "How does he even know I'm here?" "That's what worries me," Taemin said quietly, and for the first time since she'd walked into that room, the calm control in his face cracked open into something sharper, something that looked almost like fear, though fear for her, not for himself. "Grace hired you through 3 layers of shell contracts specifically so no one could trace it back. If Daniel knows you're in Seoul, someone told him. Someone inside your organization," Elle said, watching his face carefully. "Or someone inside yours," Taemin said, and the words weren't an accusation, they were a warning. Quiet and grim. "Who else knew you took this job?" Elle's mind raced backward through the last 4 months, through every phone call, every document she'd signed, every conversation in the diner's back office, before she'd packed her life into 2 suitcases and boarded a plane she still wasn't entirely sure she should have trusted. "My mother," she said slowly. "Grace. And..." She stopped. "And who else?" Taemin pressed gently. "A woman from the investigation," Elle said, her stomach turning cold as the memory surfaced. 3 years ago, a junior investigator named Priya Chandran. She reached out to me 2 months ago, out of nowhere, said she'd left the bureau and was doing private consulting work now, wanted to know how I was doing. I thought it was strange at the time, but I didn't think anything of it. I told her about the job. I told her I was moving to Seoul. Something shifted behind Taemin's eyes, cold and fast, like a door slamming somewhere deep inside him. He turned to the man in the doorway. Find out everything you can about Apriya Chandran, former federal investigator, now private consultant. I want to know who's paying her within the hour. The man nodded and disappeared as quickly as he'd come, and then it was just the two of them again, standing in a room that had, in the space of 90 seconds, transformed from a confession into a war room. You think Daniel's family sent her? Elle said. It wasn't really a question. I think, Taemin said carefully, that Daniel Osei disappeared for 3 years because the moment his family's operation collapsed, the people above them decided he was worth more as a ghost than as a liability, walking around with your name still attached to old transactions. Ghosts don't get audited, but ghosts also don't get forgiven. Elle, if he's back, it's because someone decided the risk of resurrecting him is smaller than whatever problem you and I just became by being seen together tonight. What problem could we possibly be? Elle asked, though even as she said it, some cold, clear part of her mind was already assembling the answer. Taemin said it anyway, because he'd clearly already worked it out long before she had. My father has spent 30 years building an organization that survives specifically because it never lets sentiment interfere with business. The moment his son is seen pursuing the one woman connected to an old, buried liability, certain people start wondering whether that son is still fit to inherit anything at all. And if Daniel's family, or whoever controls him now, can prove that you and I have a personal history that predates my hiring you, they don't just embarrass me, they hand my uncle exactly the leverage he's been waiting 3 years to use. Your uncle, Elle repeated. Different family, same business as mine, Taemin said. Longer story than we have time for tonight. What matters is that he spent a year telling the board my judgment can't be trusted, since I started pushing to move the organization toward legitimate hospitality and investment work, instead of the things my father built it on. If he finds out about tonight, about you, he won't come after me directly. He'll come after you, because destroying you is a faster way to destroy me. Elle felt something old and familiar rise up in her chest. Not fear exactly. Something closer to the particular fury of a woman who has already survived being used as somebody else's leverage once before, and refuses to let it happen twice. So what? She said. I just disappear again? Change my name a 4th time? Move somewhere Daniel's ghost and your uncle's ambition can't reach me? No, Taemin said, and the force behind the single word surprised them both. No, I didn't spend 3 years finding you just to watch you disappear the moment things got dangerous. I made a mistake 3 years ago staying silent while people I could have protected got hurt by my family's business. I am not making that mistake again. Then what exactly do you propose? Elle asked, arms crossed, chin lifted, refusing to let him see how much his answer actually mattered to her. Taemin was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice had dropped into something low and deliberate, the voice of a man laying out a plan he'd clearly been building in the back of his mind for longer than tonight. We go to my father directly, before my uncle can. I tell him everything. What happened to you 3 years ago, what I've done since, what I intend to do now. My father respects directness more than he respects secrecy, even when the truth makes him uncomfortable. If I control the story, my uncle has nothing to leverage. You want to tell your father you're pursuing the woman his organization once tried to destroy, Elle said flatly. I want to tell my father the truth, Taemin said, that his organization already destroyed enough, that I intend to be the reason it starts building something different instead. Elle studied him for a long moment, searching his face for the practiced charm she'd learned to recognize in Daniel. The smoothness that had once fooled her into believing a man's confidence was the same thing as his character. She didn't find it. What she found instead was something rawer, something that looked like a man standing at the edge of a decision he couldn't take back, and choosing to jump anyway. And if your father sides with your uncle? She asked quietly. If this costs you everything, then it costs me everything, Taemin said simply. I'd rather lose an empire I never wanted than lose the chance to finally do one thing in my life that isn't built on somebody else's suffering. The door opened again before Elle could answer, and the same nervous aide from before stepped back in, this time with a tablet in his hands, his face even paler than it had been minutes earlier. "Sir," he said. "Priya Chandran wired $40,000 into an offshore account 8 weeks ago. The account traces back through 2 shell companies to a holding group registered in Macau." He paused, glancing at Elle before finishing. "The holding group is owned by your uncle." The silence that followed was the loudest thing Elle had ever heard. "He's been planning this since before I even brought you to Seoul," Taemin said slowly, almost to himself, working through the implications in real time. "Which means he knew I was looking for you long before tonight. Which means Daniel's return isn't a coincidence at all. My uncle found him, funded him, and sent him back specifically to be found asking about you, in public, where it would reach exactly the right ears. He's using Daniel as bait," Elle said, understanding arriving cold and fast, "to make it look like I have some ongoing entanglement with the man who nearly got me killed. To make me look dangerous, or complicit, or both. And to make me look like a man who let personal weakness compromise the organization's judgment." Taemin finished grimly. 2 birds, 1 very carefully thrown stone. Elle exhaled slowly, feeling the shape of the trap settle around her, familiar in the worst possible way. 3 years ago, she'd been collateral damage in somebody else's war, dragged under by a current she never saw coming. She had promised herself, standing in that hospital room with 3 broken ribs and a detective asking questions she couldn't answer, that she would never again let herself become a tool in somebody else's story. "I'm not doing this quietly," she said, and something in her voice made Taemin go very still. "I'm not going to sit in a safe house while you and your father and your uncle decide my fate behind closed doors. If your uncle wants to use Daniel as a weapon against both of us, then I want to be in the room when it happens. I want to look Daniel Osei in the eye for the first time in 3 years, and I want your uncle to watch me do it without flinching." For a long moment, Taemin simply looked at her, and something moved behind his eyes that Elle couldn't quite name. Something between awe and worry, and a kind of aching tenderness he clearly hadn't expected to feel this soon, this fast, for a woman who by every right should have walked out of that room and never looked back. "That's either the bravest thing I've ever heard," he said quietly, "or the most reckless." "With me," Elle said, "it's usually both." A small, unguarded smile broke across Taemin's face, gone almost as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the sharp focus of a man already 3 steps ahead, already rearranging pieces on a board only he could fully see. "Then we do this together," he said. "My father's office, tomorrow morning, before my uncle has time to finish whatever story he's building. And somewhere between now and then, we find out exactly what Daniel Osei thinks he's walking back into." Outside the tall windows of the private dining room, Seoul spread out in a glittering sprawl of light, indifferent to the storm quietly gathering 30 floors above its streets. Elle looked out at that skyline, a city she'd arrived in only months ago as a stranger running from her own history, and felt something settle inside her that hadn't been there in 3 years. Not quite peace, not quite courage, but something adjacent to both. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," Taemin echoed. And neither of them moved to leave the room, because whatever this was becoming, neither one of them was ready yet to let the night end. The morning came too fast and not fast enough, the way mornings do when you've spent the night rehearsing a conversation you can't actually control. Elle stood in the marble lobby of the Lee Corp headquarters, feeling the weight of every eye that passed, and reminded herself that she had survived worse rooms than this one. Colder rooms, crueler rooms, rooms where nobody had stood beside her the way Taemin did now.
My father doesn't shout. That's not the danger. The danger is when he goes very, very quiet.
Then I'll match him. Quiet I can do."
The elevator doors opened onto the top floor, and there he was, Lee Suk-won, seated behind a desk that seemed to have been built specifically to make everyone standing in front of it feel smaller. Beside him stood a man Elle recognized immediately without ever having seen his face before. The same sharp features as Taemin, but arranged into something colder, something that had spent a lifetime waiting for exactly this moment. "So," the uncle said, before anyone else could speak, "this is the woman. Her name is Elle Morris," Taemin said, his voice even. "Say it correctly, or don't say it at all." The uncle's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Very well, Elle Morris. Do you understand what you've walked into? You think you're standing in a business meeting. You're standing in the middle of a 30-year negotiation about who this family becomes, and you're being used as the excuse for it." "I'm not being used as anything," Elle said, and she made herself hold his gaze, though her pulse was hammering. "I already spent 3 years being somebody's excuse without my permission. I came here to make sure that doesn't happen a second time." Suk-won had not yet spoken. He watched the exchange the way a man watches weather roll in, patient, unreadable, waiting to see which direction the wind would settle. Finally he rose, slowly, and walked around the desk until he stood an arm's length from his brother. "My son came to me last night," he said, "and told me things I did not know. About Daniel Osei. About the money that moved 8 weeks ago from an account you control into an account belonging to a woman who used to investigate this family for the federal government. About a shell company registered in Macau that traces back, 3 layers deep, to your name. Careful," the uncle said quietly. "You're about to accuse your own blood in front of an outsider." "She stopped being an outsider," Taemin said, "the moment you decided to use her as a weapon against me. That makes this family's business her business now, whether you like it or not." The uncle turned on his nephew fully then, and for the first time his composure slipped into something sharper, something that had clearly been waiting years to be said. "You want to lecture me about loyalty? I have spent 2 decades protecting this family from every threat your father was too proud to see coming, and you repay 30 years of my work by choosing a woman connected to one of our oldest liabilities, in public, where anyone with eyes could use it against us. I didn't create this danger, Taemin. You did, the moment you decided sentiment mattered more than survival." "No," Taemin said, and something in his voice made even Suk-won go still. "You created it the moment you decided a woman's suffering was an acceptable cost of doing business. I let that happen once, 3 years ago, because I told myself it wasn't my responsibility to carry. I am not making that mistake again, and I am not going to let you dress up cruelty as loyalty just because you've been doing it longer than I've been alive." The room went silent except for the faint hum of the city 30 floors below. Elle watched the uncle's jaw tighten, watched him search his brother's face for an ally he no longer had. "Suk-won," the uncle said, quieter now, almost pleading, "you would choose them over me, over your own brother?" Suk-won was quiet for a long moment, long enough that Elle found herself holding her breath without meaning to. When he finally spoke, his voice had none of the coldness she'd braced for. It carried something closer to grief.
I built this family's business on the belief that strength meant never apologizing for what it cost other people. I am 61 years old, and last night was the first time my own son looked me in the eye and told me the truth about what that belief actually did to someone. I don't get to undo 30 years overnight, but I can decide, today, which brother I choose to become for whatever years I have left. And I choose the one who stops.
He turned to Elle then, and inclined his head, the smallest gesture, but she felt the weight of it.
Ms. Morris, this family owes you a debt it can never fully repay. I intend to start trying regardless.
The uncle's face drained of color as 2 of Suk-won's security men stepped into the room behind him, waiting quietly by the door for a signal that hadn't yet come. "You're making a mistake," he said, but the words had lost their force, and everyone in the room could hear it. "Perhaps," Suk-won said, "but it's mine to make." By early afternoon, security had located Daniel Osei in a hotel across the city, still waiting for instructions from a patron who would never call again. Elle insisted on being there when they brought him in, not out of cruelty, but because she needed, finally, to stand in front of the man who had once let her become a message meant for someone else, and show him the message had failed. Daniel looked older than she remembered, thinner, hollowed out by 3 years of running from his own shadow. When he saw her, something in his face crumpled, somewhere between shame and relief, as if part of him had been waiting to be caught. "Elle," he started. "I didn't know they'd use you like that. I swear, when I left, I thought I was protecting you by disappearing." "Stop," Elle said, and her voice didn't shake. "I didn't come here for an explanation. I spent 3 years imagining this conversation, imagining everything I'd want to say to you, and standing here now, I realize I don't actually need any of it." "Then why come at all?" Daniel asked quietly. "Because I needed to see it for myself," Elle said. "That you don't have power over my life anymore. That the girl you left in that ditch built something you could never take from her again." She held his gaze one last moment, not with hatred, but with something calmer and far more final. "I hope you find whatever peace looks like for you. I already found mine. It just didn't have anything to do with you." She walked out of that room without waiting to hear his answer, because for the first time in 3 years, his answer no longer had the power to change a single thing about her life. The weeks that followed unwound quietly, the way real endings often do, without fireworks, without cameras, just steady, deliberate work. The uncle was formally removed from the board within the month, his shell companies exposed and dismantled one careful filing at a time, by a nephew who had finally stopped being afraid of his own family's disappointment. Daniel disappeared once more, this time with no one left to protect him, and no one left to weaponize him. A ghost with nowhere left to haunt. Elle stayed in Seoul, not because Taemin asked her to, though he did, quietly, without pressure, leaving the choice entirely hers the way no one ever had before. She stayed because somewhere between losing everything and rebuilding it twice over, she had learned the difference between a man who wanted to rescue her and a man who simply wanted to stand beside her while she rescued herself. Taemin had never once tried to be her hero. He had only ever tried to be honest, and it turned out that was the rarer thing, and the thing she had needed all along. 6 months later, on a quiet evening with the city glittering below the same windows where it had all nearly fallen apart, Taemin took her hand and told her, without a single rehearsed word this time,
I love you. Not the idea of you, not the guilt my family had cost you. Just you, exactly as you are. The woman who had walked into my family's darkest room and shined light on it.
I love you too. I think I have for longer than I wanted to admit.
And outside, Seoul kept glittering, indifferent and eternal, the way great cities always are, holding 1,000 other stories in its light while this one, finally, quietly, became just theirs.
Thank you for staying till the very end. Let me know in the comments which moment got to you the most. I read all of them. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next story.